Last week in Michigan politics, following a state Supreme Court ruling earlier this summer, we now know when and by how much the state's minimum wage is set to increase at a much faster rate. We break down what to expect. Plus, new state law means an expanded ability for many places to start processing absentee ballots earlier and potentially cut down how long it takes to report results on election night. But how is processing different from the actual counting? We look into what that means. I'm Josh Alburtus, and this is your 13 on your side rundown. And we begin with a bipartisan town hall in Grand Rapids last week that highlighted some issues discussed at the vice presidential debate in New York on Tuesday. 13 on your side's Kiara Patterson was at the Gerald R. Ford Presidential Museum for that town hall and has the details.
I think there's ample amount of skepticism, but I think it's going to take some cycles going forward to kind of work that out.
On Tuesday, just hours before the vice presidential debate, a bipartisan town hall on Michigan elections was held at the Gerald R. Ford Museum. Former Michigan Congressman Republican Mike Bishop stressed the importance of election integrity.
I think now through the election, it's going to be very important for us to have this discussion. We just want to bring calm, take down the temperature. This is a bipartisan group that wants to discuss in a bipartisan way how we make our elections free, fair, and trustworthy.
The panel featuring former members of Congress discussed topics on election security, voter mistrust, and political violence. Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson says safety is the biggest concern this election season.
In a really tragic era of political violence that we find ourselves, that is at the same time an era of misinformation. There's a direct line between the misinformation and about our elections and threats to election officials and our families and our staff.
The panel also took questions from attendees ranging from campaign tactics to voter fraud and even fact-checking presidential candidates after debates. Former United States Representative, Democrat Mark Schauer, says it's important now more than ever to be prepared and do your research before you vote.
The public looks up to elected officials as elites and other elites like the media to shape their opinions. And so current and former lawmakers and candidates, for that matter, need to lead.
Reporting Kiara Patterson, 13 on your side.
With absentee ballots already available for Michiganders, we spoke to Ottawa County Clerk Justin Roebuck this week about the absentee ballot processing and tabulating procedures. Roebuck told us that with this election, local clerks have an option to process absentee ballots up until 8 days prior to the election in many different precincts. Clerks that decide to take this route must notify the public and the Secretary of State of when and where this process is taking place.
So during that time of processing, the absentee ballots are removed from the locked room and they're brought into this public setting. Bipartisan teams of election inspectors are going to be doing the processing. They open the ballots up, verify that there is a ballot numbered stub on the physical ballot that matches what's been on the envelope. Then the team that opens the envelope removes the initial ballot within a secrecy sleeve. That envelope gets set aside, so now we don't have a name with the voted ballot. And then another separate bipartisan team is actually opening up and unfolding the ballot.
Using multiple bipartisan teams not only has multiple verification steps, but also allows for secrecy, as the team that sees the voter's name doesn't see their ballot, and the team that sees the ballot does not see the voter's name. And once all of the ballots are processed ahead of Election Day, they can also be tabulated.
And then those voted ballots are cast into a tabulator that looks just like the one that you're going to vote in if you vote on Election Day. And those results are never generated until after 8 p.m. on election night. So whether you process ballots a few days early in a municipality, or if you're processing ballots only on Election Day, we can never see totals until after 8 p.m. on election night.
Roebuck also told us that the absentee ballot results will still likely be slightly delayed, as there will still be more absentee ballots to process that came in after the initial processing period, but before the polls closed election night. Michigan Attorney General Dana Nessel announced this week that her office is charging 7 people suspected of crimes related to alleged double voting in our August primary election. The Attorney General says 4 of them are voters from St. Clair Shores, whose votes she says were counted twice, and 3 of them are municipal election employees. Her office took over the case in mid-August. It was referred to her office at that time. She called the Macomb County Prosecutor's Office handling of this matter, quote, insufficient. The Attorney General also says 2 out of the 3 assistant clerks charged here had previously registered to be election workers and had listed as members of the Democratic Party during their training. However, Nessel emphasized that in her view, this is more than a partisan issue.
None of that matters in this case, whether you're a Democrat, Republican, or an independent, a first-time voter or a long-time voter. You only get 1 vote. And it is the job of our dedicated public servants to ensure this basic tenet of our democratic system is followed.
Each of the 7 are facing multiple charges. Macomb County Prosecutor's Office did not initially file criminal charges. Nessel said warrants are now outstanding, and therefore, as of Friday morning when she gave that press conference, she was not yet aware of when arraignment may take place. Agriculture is a cornerstone industry here in West Michigan, and as election season gets into full swing, farmers will be watching a few Michigan races very closely. Coming up, how this all-important voter bloc and their needs are factoring into one of the most closely watched races in the nation. Now to your voice, your vote. As we mentioned earlier, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz and Ohio Senator J.D. Vance faced off in a debate this past week for the first and perhaps last time before November's election. Both candidates set a much different tone seemingly than previous debates leading to this election. Personal attacks that were seen in those previous debates were usually kept to a minimum, but the issues touched on were the same. The economy and border security were once again the big topics during the debate. Tim Walz and J.D. Vance also received questions ranging from the tensions in the Middle East to the state of our country's economy. Both candidates also discussed the climate change impact after Hurricane Helene that left 6 U.S. states devastated and over 100 people dead at least. Ohio Senator J.D. Vance was back once again in West Michigan this week. It was the Republican vice presidential nominee's 5th stop in West Michigan since becoming Donald Trump's running mate. 13 on your side's Julia Gorman was at the Berlin Raceway in Marne for the event and breaks down what he had to say one day after that vice presidential debate.
Just about a month out from the presidential election, Republican vice presidential candidate J.D. Vance spoke to West Michiganders at the Berlin Raceway in Ottawa County.
We got a hell of a crowd in the state of Michigan. Are we ready to turn this state red and take the country back? Yes, we are.
Touching on Tuesday night's debate against Minnesota Governor and Democratic vice presidential candidate Tim Walz.
Here's what I said to the governor last night is he has got actually the toughest job in American politics, and in some ways, I've got the easiest job in American politics.
His 5th visit to West Michigan, I asked Senator Vance.
Just wondering if you can elaborate on why you continue to come back to our area and advocate for your campaign.
Well, because I love this part of the state, I love the state of Michigan, and frankly, I feel maybe if I come when it's a little warmer, I won't have to come so much when it's really cold. Look, we're going to be here every week, probably me or President Trump, until the election, because this is such an important part of our state. If we're investing in American energy resources and American workers, if we're penalizing companies that are shipping jobs overseas and rewarding the workers and businesses that are building things right here in the United States of America, Michigan is going to lead a great American manufacturing renaissance, and I want to carry that message to all corners of the state, but especially to Grand Rapids.
Talking specifically about the auto industry.
What Donald Trump and I want to do is empower people to drive the cars that they want to drive and empower Michigan auto workers to make what the American people want.
And we have the entirety of Vance's speech up on our YouTube page for those to watch. Vice President Kamala Harris also was in our battleground state this past week. Friday, she spoke in Metro Detroit at the Redford Township Fire Department. Vice President Harris told the crowd, made up of representatives from different unions, that when unions are strong, America is strong. Later on that evening, Vice President Harris attended a campaign event in Flint. She was joined by Lansing native and former Michigan State University basketball star Magic Johnson. One key group many campaigns are vying for in this region this election season, farmers. And in one critical race for the U.S. Senate, the needs of these workers could prove pivotal in November.
No matter where you go in West Michigan, it's hard to miss the sheer number of farms.
We are vegetables, fruits, we are dairy, we have a much greater diversity.
According to the state's Farm Bureau, Michigan is one of the most agriculturally diverse in the nation, and its farmers the second largest influencers on its economy. And with roughly a quarter of the state's workforce being in the industry, according to the Farm Bureau, farms have become a hot battleground in a number of key local races. One of those, the race for U.S. Senate.
You know what we're looking for? We just need a team member in Washington, D.C. to help us make a difference. That's all we're asking for. A proactive team member to have our voice in Washington, D.C. so that way we can work hard, grow the crops, and provide a healthy nutritional diet for the American folks.
And with some farmers saying they're in need of help, many have looked to find a candidate to deliver. It's made this industry a key voting bloc as Senate candidates had been vying for the influential endorsement of AgriPAC, the political arm of the powerful Michigan Farm Bureau.
Senator Stabenow, as chairwoman of the Senate bill, has been masterful at getting Michigan crops, Michigan growers, our specialty crops.
But where AgriPAC had backed now retiring Democrat Debbie Stabenow for the seat in multiple elections, they chose not to endorse the candidate she hopes will replace her, instead backing former Republican Congressman Mike Rogers.
We traveled the state, we've met dozens and dozens and dozens of farmers, and we did something unique. We listened to them. They have regulatory burdens and problems they placed on the last 4 years. They are crying for help. And we had people in Washington, D.C. the whole time apparently not paying attention. And so what they want is somebody who's going to go be a champion for them, somebody that's going to have their back.
Rogers is set to face Democratic Congresswoman Alyssa Slotkin, the lone current Michigan member of Congress on the House Agriculture Committee, who told us at a separate event on Monday geared towards seniors that completing work on the Farm Bill, a recurring bill package having provided key agriculture programs for decades, is a focus.
The way I see ag issues is, just as I said, we got to get through this election. Everyone's sick of it. Everyone's ready to be done. But the minute we're done, we have from November till the end of December to get that Farm Bill done, that once in every 5 years piece of legislation.
But with at least some of the short-term version of the Farm Bill passed last year having been set to expire Monday, Rogers has sought to use the delay and possible lapse to encourage farmers he will get the job done over Slotkin. And as for the news of the AgriPAC endorsement,
look, it's political season. I look forward to working with anyone who's here to advocate for our farmers as soon as this election is done.
The state's minimum wage is set to rise 2 times next year after a Michigan Supreme Court ruling earlier this year. Coming up, we'll share the newly released timeline for the increase and what happens next. At the Capitol, new information just this past week on the minimum wage increase here in Michigan starting in January. We break down exactly when workers can expect raises. Well, the state of Michigan has now said what we can expect and when we can expect it when it comes to this new minimum wage increase schedule. Now, just to give some background, this is a result of that state Supreme Court ruling earlier this year. It said the tactic the state legislature used back in 2018 to pass a proposed ballot initiative themselves and then amend that law to water down that minimum wage increase it entailed was unconstitutional. So the court ordered that original law passed before it was amended was the true law of the state. Now, what we're seeing exactly how this new pay schedule is going to work. We are set for not 1 but 2 state minimum wage increases next year. One will be on the first of the year when it will rise from $10 $10.33 an hour to $10.56. The second will come on February 21st, when it will rise to $12.48. Then we're going to see that February 21st schedule stick around for every year through 2028, where it will be just about $15 an hour. And then it will be subject to inflation adjustments after that. But many tipped workers here in Michigan, particularly in the service industry, have been very outspoken against this and have asked for what they see as a fix.
Me personally, I make more in tips than I would with minimum wage. People are coming, and obviously the prices would get raised if restaurants have to pay servers more. So they're paying more for their meals in general, and they know that we're getting paid a higher hourly wage, so they're going to be less inclined to tip.
And what are some of them talking about when they say that? Well, right now the minimum wage for tipped workers stands at 38% of the general state minimum wage, but the tips they earn can make up the rest of that. Now, this new schedule says that by 2030, employers will have to pay their tipped workers 100% of the minimum wage themselves. Some fear that will not only force employers to cut jobs and raise prices to make up for those increased costs, but also make customers less likely to tip, and therefore cost those workers tips that would otherwise make them more money than having this new minimum wage will. So arguments on either side of this, and we'll see if this sticks around as it comes into place, or if the legislature will move toward a change some are asking for. The results of an audit on the electrical reliability of consumers' energy are out, and the utility now knows what officials say it needs to work on. The audit, commissioned by the Michigan Public Service Commission, took more than a year to complete. It was carried out to get to the root causes of lagging reliability in some people's view and slow service restoration times. In 2022 and 2023, Consumers Energy rated among the bottom quarter of utility companies on the average time it took to restore power to a customer. It was 10.5 hours. Last week, the efforts to reopen the long-shuttered Palisades nuclear power plant in Van Buren County have begun moving forward. A $1.5 billion loan guarantee from the federal government was finalized. Energy technology company Holtec International acquired the Palisades plant in 2022. Once reopened, it is expected to create about 1,000 jobs and provide clean energy to nearly 1 million homes. It would also be the first decommissioned nuclear plant that had its fuel removed to ever be restarted in the United States. Political ads can seem like half the commercials on TV right now, and some are worried about the potential of misinformation some may contain. Coming up, we'll break down the rules around on-air political ads and when broadcast stations may be required to air them. There are a lot of political ads on air as we get into the final weeks of election season, and the rise of disinformation has made some wonder why TV stations may run political ads that may contain disinformation. Earlier this year, we looked into the rules and what those are, and we take a look back at what we found.
It's that special year again, where candidates for public office will look to fill the airwaves with their pitch to voters. But what if those ads contain misinformation? Do TV stations still have to run them? That answer lies not in the newsroom, but in the rules of the Federal Communications Commission. To break down what they say, well, we went straight to an expert.
Once a political candidate has declared for office and they're determined to be a legal official candidate, a broadcast outlet is actually prohibited from censoring anything in their commercial message.
For example, say I'm running for public office and I run an ad like this. Hi, I'm Josh Alburtus, and I'm running for literally any office. I also invented the wheel. You're welcome, Motor City. You should vote for me because I literally invented the wheel. I'm Josh Alburtus, and I approve this message.
Well, spoiler alert, I did not invent the wheel. That is disinformation. But if I read an ad like this and I was a qualified candidate for that office, meaning I announced my run, am qualified under state and federal law, and either qualify for a place already on the ballot or I'm running as a write-in with substantial showing, the rules say a broadcast station would have to air this if I requested and paid for it. It's only when the ad is run by a third party that it can be changed.
If we're talking about a third party buying an ad, like the Citizens for Better Plumbing, let's say, whatever they call themselves, and they're running an ad in a campaign, those rules don't apply. The television station could go in and say, that doesn't seem right. We're going to take that out.
But of course, some misinformation that could come from candidates' ads may be a little harder to identify than a claim that they invented the wheel. While some states like Michigan have moved to mandate things like disclosures for artificial intelligence being used in these ads, the situation still remains concerning for some.
And I'm as strong a First Amendment proponent as you're going to find, but at the same time, if we're relying on people to do their own homework and do their own research, how do they know what sources they're evaluating to come to the decision that something is correct or not?
So what can voters really do to make sure that they know what's true and what's not?
They really just have to be vigilant. I don't see the rules changing because of that protection that we want to make sure that we don't start restricting political speech. I mean, I think that the extreme, the other way, could be disastrous also.
And that's the rundown for your week in Michigan politics. Be sure to keep up with all the top political stories of the day, both on air and online at 13onyourside.com. We'll see you next week.